Welcome back to another episode of a Diary of a Sales Expert podcast. Thank you so much for giving me your ears again. It's appreciated. And I'm absolutely focused on sharing inside stories and ideas that can help you achieve what you want to. So before I get on to waffle anymore, I wanted to talk this week about a story around university, because I was talking to a couple of my family members around their plans for later on in the year, and they were thinking about whether they were going to go to university or not. Some of them have been wondering whether they should go to university. And I wanted just to share a story around and the title I've given to this podcast is why university worked for me, but it wasn't about what I learned. And I wanted to just share a few thoughts around that, because I think it's relevant, especially for you. By the time this podcast goes out, there'll be a lot of people that are maybe have got family members that are going to university for the first sort of time in the next few weeks, and people are looking forward to it and all the elements around it. But there is a big difference in going to university compared to when I went to university. And I'll share that in a moment. But you might also be thinking, what's this got to do with a sales expert podcast though, James? And the reason being is I'm going to share 4 or 5 stories that and elements and themes that I think make it very relevant from a sales perspective. And there are some key things that I believe are critical for my sales career that university taught me, and it wasn't necessarily what I learned from the lecturers. So the first one I'm going to share with you. So if you have got a son, a daughter, or a family member that's going off to university, maybe share these sort of 5 things with them. And if you're in sales and you're thinking of, helping someone achieve these goals, then maybe you can relate to it based upon the elements that I now have seen since I've become, very much, into my career and building my career over the last 30 years. And as I say, I actually, for those that want to know, I went to a university called Plymouth University in 1993. So I was on a course called Business Information Management Systems. So you are listening to a Bachelor of Science. And if you cannot believe that, then neither can I, because that's the only thing I know about science. And the only reason why, and I've got some friends that my course was a course called BIMS. And long story short was I was on BIMS because I didn't get the grades at A-levels that I needed to go on the course that I really wanted to go on, which was a Bachelor of Arts in Business Studies. And my friends, from university, and I'll talk a bit more about them in a moment, always, say that I was on DIMS, not BIMS. So I was a bit dim, and I hadn't got the right qualifications in order to be able to get to the course they wanted to. But I was on this course of Business Information Management Systems and Bachelor of Science. And again, for anyone that knows me, they'll know that I love my sales, I love my marketing, I love my management and leadership and all those things. I am not a developer or a coder or a technical process-based person. And the things that my course had was database design. How many times have you used that? My course was on relationship modeling. How many times have I used that in my career? My course was on business analytics. How many times have I used that in my career? I've used analytics. I understand it a bit more times. I wouldn't say that was a complete lost one, but probably not ideal. Development code or programming for beginners. How many times have I used that in my career? 0. So the reality is there was not a lot that and I did have the chance over the course of the degree to go and get involved in some other modules from other areas. But so much of what I learned, I really struggled with at university. So, when people ask me and say to me, is university a good, grounding place to go and learn things? Of course, you're going to learn some stuff at university. But I was reading this article the other day that said, if you read something and just capture information in, then your chances are you won't remember it. But if you actively do it all of the time and it becomes ingrained in your world, then of course you learn it and know how to do it. And the reason being, I just didn't have the interest in certain areas to do certain things. But being blunt, for the first 2 years of my university, life, I did like what most students did and slept in very, very late and drank lots and basically enjoyed a really life of Riley. My student years, I'm not going to go into the details of them. There's some stories there that maybe we don't want to hear, right now. And if you come and meet me and some of my friends, and you maybe we get to see some of them, but hear some of them. But the reality is there are 4 or 5 key things that it did teach me that I just wanted to talk, which I think have a relevance to sales and selling and careers. And the first one was this. I remember phoning my mum and dad. So I was in Plymouth and my family are based in Somerset, Western-super-Mare. which is only an hour and a half down the motorway, sort of like 100 miles. And I remember phoning my dad and my mum and crying down the phone to them 6 weeks in. And I remember saying to them that I was unhappy, where I didn't enjoy the course because for some of the reasons, the technical things, it wasn't something I was enjoying. I was living, I'm very lucky. There was a lady that I lived with in the first year of university who I'd gone to school with, a lady called Sam. And she was my sort of good job she was there, because she was the only person I sort of knew in university in the first sort of 6 or 7 weeks. And I'd not met some of the friends that I now have, and got some incredible friends from university, which I still see 30 years on. And the reason I'm doing this podcast around university is because it's 30 years since I was at university. But what I remember, saying to my dad, I want to quit. I want to stop doing this. I want to come back. I want to, my dad, I remember saying to me, you've got to be a bit resilient. Come on, son, be a bit resilient. Give it a bit more time. Give it a few more weeks. Another week. And long story short, 10 weeks in, I'd found some friends, and then I started to settle into life, and I never looked back. And I guess what it showed me is the first thing is about having that bit of resilience. And one of the things that we often see in sales is that people don't have that much resilience, that we get a bit, soft, and we have one or two kickbacks and knockbacks and then failures, and suddenly we want to give up and stop. And I guess what universities taught me was actually you have to be resilient. You have to go through some tough times. You have to go through some shit to basically come out the other side and smell good. And there's this great John Mayer quote, which is, the road to easy street is through the sewer. And sometimes you've got to go through the difficult moments in order to get the enjoyable moments. And if I'd have quitted and literally stopped at that 6 week process, half the things of the way my life turned out wouldn't have happened the way it has done, and the experiences that I've had. So first thing I think about is resilience. It's going to be tough. There are going to be times when people are going to be crying and they're missing home and whatever else. It's going to be that way. But just remember to sort of say to yourself, it's not going to be like that forever, and to give yourself that bit more time and give those loved ones more time. And if you're in the sales situation, it's just build that resilience. Keep focusing on why you were doing what you're doing, and build that resilience to not give in. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing that I would say, which is really, really critical around university and what it taught me, was when you go to university, sometimes you get to live in halls of residence. A lot of universities have that now. But I didn't. I had to find my own house. And literally, I lived with, in the first year, 5 other people alongside Sam in my first year. And then in year 2 and year 4, I lived with my friends that I'd got to know and love, and that was great. But in year 1, I lived with some people, and year 2, I lived with some people who, it's probably fair to say that if they ever listen to this podcast and someone asked them what was James White like to live with in university, they would probably put me up there, on a pedestal with the devil and, some other bad leader person in history. I don't know, but I was not a good person to live with. I was a pain in the backside for many reasons. Only the fact that I'd probably come home drunk and, literally, do things and fall asleep places and go to the loo places I shouldn't have done. All these type of things that people do when you're in university times. I remember in my second year at university, I, continually used to play darts when this lady that I was living with was, final year for exams, and all she'd say to people, all she could hear from 10 o'clock until midnight was a thump, thump, thump on her wall as I played darts and tried to get better at scoring 180s. And the reality, I guess the reason why I'm saying this is, what did it teach me? Was it taught me, and I look back now, about emotional intelligence, which I think is such a critical factor for anyone in business to have, but certainly in sales. The ability to have emotional intelligence, to be able to understand and read situations and circumstances, and to know when you're being out of order and how to adjust your behavior. And if you don't know emotional intelligence is a concept by a guy called Daniel Goleman. It's 5 characteristics: self-awareness, self-control, empathy, socialization, and motivation. And the key the two that I think are key for me, which I look back now and learnt and realised, was that self-awareness of realising when I was being a dick. I now can see, wow, how difficult I must have been to live with and how challenging that must have been for other people. And for me, that self-awareness of being able to realize when you're out of order and when you've done something wrong or when you've done something you shouldn't have done, to be able to look in the mirror and be self-reflective. I think my time at university taught me that, certainly when I look back now, and it's made me realize actually how I need to adjust my behavior in order to achieve and do what I want and to be the person I want to be. So I think that and from a business and sales perspective, you have to have that emotional intelligence. The things we do sometimes in our careers can get in the way and stop us making the progress that we want. And, having emotional intelligence to be able to know when to do certain things and when not to do stuff, or when you're annoying people and when to back off and when to, do more. And that being able to read people is something that fascinates me now. And actually it's, the whole concept of behavioral science and behavioral economics is something that, as much as I love the work I do in sales, that's where a lot of my passion is now, is how people do things and why they do things and how to change behaviors. So I'm a massive believer in the fact that, emotional intelligence is the factor that will drive so many people. And I learned emotional intelligence by not being emotionally intelligent when I was in these early years at university. And as I progressed through and I got a bit more matured and I got into my third year when I went and did a placement, I matured a bit more. But and I will use this as a maybe a little message to those people now. If you live with me in that first 2 years in university, Rachel, I think there was Tanya, Vicky, Tamar, Claire, I'm really sorry. I was a dick to live with, and it taught me some emotional intelligence, and I apologise because I wasn't a good university, I wasn't a good housemate, and it taught me a lot of things that I now know that I could have changed differently. I think the final three things I wanted just to mention around university that are really key was nearly dying and realising how special life is. So there is a story that my friends will share of again, university being university, what it is. A lecture was cancelled. Long story short, we decided that instead of going back to the house, we would go to the nearest pub at 11 o'clock in the morning when the lecture was cancelled, and we carried on drinking all the way through till goodness knows when in the evening. And the student union in Plymouth, there was always used to be, the union was down some steps, and then there was these other steep steps down to the main hall, and where the main hall was. And the story was, and I don't remember this totally because I was obviously a little bit drunk, but the reality was I had my back. So the doctor said, or the nurses or the ambulance that picked me up at the time basically said my rucksack had saved me. My textbook on goodness knows what course I was doing, on what module I was doing that day, had saved me. But long story short, I'd been drinking all day with other friends and then proceeded to pirouette. And George, the barman, I remember him saying to someone, he looked like a ballerina as he pirouetted round and round and round and then down these steps. And basically I fell down steps that were, I'm going to say they were 30 foot, 40 foot steps, concrete steps, down to the floor, and my head was only stopped from hitting the floor by my rucksack. So my textbook saved me. There you go. My textbook saved me from probably a near-death experience. And obviously the ambulance came and took me off to hospital, and I probably wasn't the ideal patient that night. And again, a few of my friends will talk about how they were asked to look after me in the evening when I got back. And anyway, but the point is this. That was a really turning point for me, because I probably at that stage of my university life, I was in my second year, I was drinking way too much. I probably was at a point where I wasn't far off, being alcohol dependent, but it taught me. And I remember really thinking afterwards, it took me a little while to realize, but actually life's really special and really precious. And so, don't do daft things that can cause major problems for you later down the line. Or sometimes you need that wake up call in order to realize how important life is and special life is. And sometimes in sales situations, we need a bad experience to make us realize what we're doing and what we're not doing. So I guess from my perspective, the experience here is, what's the bad experience that you had that is potentially could have caused you a major issue, that as a result, now you know you had it, you can go and change and do something different. And for me, it was nearly dying in a drunken episode, and it made me realize that life is precious. And I now try and live life every day as if it's my last. I want to be thankful and grateful for waking up in the morning. And one day I'll probably won't wake up, and you might be listening to this podcast and I'm gone, but at least I've spent the rest of my life trying to realize how important life is, and don't sweat the small things. be able to treat life as as you can, live life as if it's every day. And there's a brilliant sales book by a guy called OG Mandino. If you've never ever read it, called the top traits of 10 top traits of a sales, the greatest salesman in the world. Sorry, and it all talks around lots of things that great salespeople do, and one of them is to make sales every day as if it's your last. And the final thing that I'll also say about university, which I think is also linked to then sales, is 30 years ago, as I say, this year we left university, and the group of 7 of us who were together then, and we know lots of other people from university, but there's still 7 of us that see each other on a yearly basis, and 2 or 3 of those guys I'm absolutely blessed to call my best friends. I see them, 1 or 2 of them every week, some of them once every 2-3 months. And our relationships are so incredibly strong. My network is so strong. And I just think that the ability to build strong networks is, again, from a sales perspective, and to be able to have relationships and build relationships with lots of people and not shut doors is so critical. And to focus on people that are really important in your life and have them in your world and doing things with you is key. And I'm blessed that we, 30 years on from that, those times, we still connect up and see each other and look after each other, and we'll be friends for life. And that network and that ability to connect and be brave and to go out there and talk to people like I did. When I was unhappy, I made the decision to go out to a few different places and do things and talk to people. And it opened the doors for people that then made me enjoy the rest of my university days and enjoy, and I've enjoyed brilliant friendships with and memories with over the time. So again, from the sales analogy here is get out and network, get out and meet people, get out and talk to people. You never know who you can connect with, that you can build a relationship with, an affinity with, that can then become a friend over time. So look, so if you've got someone in your family that's thinking about university and wants to go there and wants to learn, I'm sure if they're training to become a vet or a doctor or a rocket scientist, then they're going to need to go to university to learn those things. If someone's looking at more an arty subject or a business subject, sure, there'll be lots of stuff they'll learn. There are some things that I didn't necessarily learn in my use in my career afterwards, but those key things around being able to build resilience, being able to build emotional intelligence, being able to understand how precious each life is and treat every day as if it's your last, and network and build amazing friends are the 4 things that I learned from university that have served me well in my career. And I encourage that whoever that's going there to maybe make sure that they focus on the same things. So, as you always know, that's my university story is what I learned, but I always finish the podcast with an inspirational story. And I wanted to share the story this week of a guy called Tony Riddle. So Tony Riddle, who is Tony Riddle? Tony Riddle set a new record for running. In the UK, we have these things called the 3 Peaks Challenge, which are the 3 top mountains in Wales, Scotland and England. And Tony and Mount Snowdon in Wales, Mount Ben Nevis in Scotland, and Scafell Pike in England. And Tony Riddle set the record of running the 3 peaks barefoot. So the reason I'm thinking barefoot, wow, I mean, if you imagine, well, I've been up those mountains and I've been up a few steep mountains. They're full of rocks and stones and whatever that would hurt your feet. So Tony Riddle, he did it in, by the way, 9 days, 7 hours and 18 minutes. And he did it because he loves benefits of barefoot running, but he likes feeling closer to nature. And it made me think, all right, lots of people have done, those challenges before, but barefoot, fair play, Tony, you get my inspiration. And again, it just shows you, even though there's a bit of pain and things that we go through, Tony's been able to train his brain, program his brain to overcome those challenges and not notice it. So if you can see Tony doing that on up mountains, then what's the inspirational thing that you can take from that? And what's the thing that you can do that you can push your mind to do and overcome those limitations that we set on ourselves? So that's it from the podcast this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope my university ideas and stories have given you some things of one around how they've taught me some great things in life and how they've helped me become a better salesperson. Hope it's helped you and given you some inspiration, some ideas, and maybe given an insight into me and my world and what I do. Hope you found it fun and useful. I'll see you next week for another episode. Take care. Until then.